The City Council meeting of Wednesday, August 6, 2014. Can I have a roll call, please?
Salem Derby. Dan Hagan.
Present.
Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
James Krasinski.
Here.
Joe McCoy.
Here.
Dan Riss.
Here.
Tamara Smith. Here. Joy Winnie.
Here.
Nathan Ziegler.
Present.
Okay, can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Got a motion for the approval of the minutes of July 2nd?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion second for the approval of the minutes of July 2nd. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any
Abstain.
abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you very much. Public speak time. If there's anyone here from the public who would like to address the council for something other than what's on our public hearing tonight, please feel to come to the podium and state your name and address. Okay, not seeing it, we can move on. Communications from officials, boards and committees, and correspondence. Councilor Rist.
Yes, we have one announcement. We have an outdoor movie night, which
It's already passed.
Gone.
July 19th.
the president asked me to announce.
Exactly.
You're behind the time.
Exactly.
I hope it was enjoyable for
It was
everybody.
very good, by the way.
Yeah.
We did receive a planning board recommendation on Parsons Street schooling, and it's part of our public hearing, and it will be discussed under the ordinance committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Communications, Mayor Cadger. Nothing? Okay. Standing committees, Rules of Government Relations, Councilor Rist.
Yes, Mr. President. After discussions with the administration, namely the finance director, I am going to move this evening to have the audit report removed from the Rules Committee agenda, namely because the issues in the audit report have been dealt with, even dealt with prior to the reports, this year's report being written. It is redundant and unnecessary to review it further, so I'm going to move that it be removed from the Rules of Government Relations report without prejudice.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to remove the FY 213 audit report from Rules of Government Relations. Any additional discussions?
I have one thing more. I just wanted to let everybody know if, in reading the report, you have questions, the finance director would be happy to answer them for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes. That concludes, I assume, Finance.
Yes.
Councilor Hagan.
Yes, next meeting of Finance will be August 13th, which is next Wednesday at 6 p.m. in Room 1. Still on our agenda, and we hope to take up next week, will be the review of elected salaries and other stipends per the city charter, and also the $279,508 for a new football field at Whitebrook Middle School. The other 2 items on listed under finance will be dealt with later tonight at the public hearings, and I believe there is a couple of items of new business that'll go to finance, which I can take up when we get to new business. One thing I would like, if I could at this time, is I would like to request a public hearing for the $279,500 appropriation for the Whitebrook Middle School field to be held at our first September meeting, which would be September 3rd, 2014, and I'd make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to set a public hearing on September 3rd for $2,580 for the new football field at Whitebrook Middle School. Any additional discussion or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
We'll conclude finance for the time being.
Okay, thank you. Public Safety, Councilor Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have a meeting to be determined within the next couple of weeks. Still on our agenda is the acceptance of Kingsbury Way, Bayberry Drive, and Birchwood Drive. Willow Circle and Autumn Drive are part of our public hearing this evening. And then we are also still working on the street acceptance protocols. So I'm hoping we can move to have Willow Circle and Autumn Drive taken off our agenda after this meeting. But
After we vote, the Public Safety, I will take it off.
okay. And this concludes.
Okay, thank you. Appointments, Councilor Winnie.
Yes, thank you. Appointments Subcommittee met tonight at 5 o'clock downstairs, and we reviewed 5 appointments. I'm going to start with the first appointment, which was one of the last appointments that were reviewed, and that would be the appointment for our new personnel director, Jane Sikowitz. And with that being said, we did meet downstairs. 5 of the 9 counselors were present. The nomination for her appointment came out positive 3-0 from the Appointment Subcommittee, but I'm going to ask that the mayor come up and speak to us a little bit about why, out of the pool of candidates, she selected Jane as our personnel director. So if Mayor Kazur would please come up. Thank you.
Thank you. And as I stated in the appointment subcommittee, this is it's a very important position, and it involves a great amount of responsibility. And it was evident to us, we met earlier, call it my financial team, our city auditor, our finance director, and myself, and also Joy assisted us in some of the interviews. And what we were looking for was a very strong candidate, and I believe you all have a copy of her resume, which is very impressive. Her educational background is also impressive. Her legal background really stuck out to us because of contract as personnel director. There's contract negotiations, grievance languages, and Jane is very, very detailed, very work-oriented. And other things that had come out in different aspects of her past employments are her workers' comp experience, which, as you also know, is part of the duties of the personnel department. I think some of the questions that might have come up is as far as being an HR director. Well, in many instances, in some of her last employments, there is no HR director, so that has been Jane. So she has done this position in many ways. She has been the open enrollment, the hiring authority, the responsible for the other employees in the department. So she pretty much has touched on most every single aspect of the position. And but we also, the administration that I have, we work very closely together. It's important that we all work as a team and for the betterment of our community. And Jane fits right into it. She's one of the pieces to the puzzle. So we have some very, very strong, very professional employees, and she fits right in. So if there are any questions at all that you would like to ask, I'd be happy to answer anything.
Are there any questions for the mayor?
Mayor, would you remember how many applicants there were for the position?
Maybe about 11 or 12 or so, out there. And we probably interviewed maybe 6 or 7. I wasn't in on all of the interviews. Val and Melissa and myself and Joy were part of the interviews, but we weren't in on all of them at the same time. You know, Joy wasn't available for all of them. She has a busy work schedule, as we know. And you know, some of the candidates were just interviewed by our auditor and our finance director. But before we interviewed, we all knew what we were looking for. And it was obvious in the meetings. Jane is a very, very detailed, conscientious worker. And also, she, as you probably know, or do know, she is the former and still present director of the Housing Authority, the Easthampton Housing Authority. She has offered to stay on to help them during their interim until they're able to replace her. And I can tell you firsthand, they do not want to replace her. She will be very, very, very missed. And I spoke directly with 2 members of the Board of Directors who gave her past glowing referrals. They are very sorry to see her go, and it was a pleasure talking to them. That was a good question.
Any questions?
Councilor Hanks, go ahead. Councilor Rich?
I just had a statement, and that is that I appreciate the kind of review committee you put together. I was happy to hear that Councilor Winnie was on it. And I think, given that you've reviewed all of these with a good committee, and that the ordinance committee has voted 3-0, although I have not been a participant even this evening when you had your appointments meeting, I feel strongly that I would support a mayor, any mayor, with the recommendation of that kind of a review committee and with our own appointments committee, to be able to support her own department head choice. I think that's important because you work with that person every day, and it's your choice. And I think we have a review, and I think the committee and the appointments committee has substantially met their obligation to review it. So I'm very satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome.
And also, I think in putting together the reviewing people, we all have very, very different personalities, so it gives you a totally different aspect of the candidates. So, like I said, but we all knew what we were looking for, and it was obvious that it was Jane.
Councilor Hagan?
Just a quick comment. First, I want to thank Councilor Whitty, because I was at the subcommittee, and she let everyone have their say and their questioning, and I want to thank the candidate for being candid in her answers. There was a lot of in-depth of questioning, and I thought the candidate answered them well. And again, I thank Councilor Whitty for kind of facilitating that process.
I agree, and I thank you for the questions. I thought the questions that the appointment subcommittee brought up were very real and very interesting, and I hope that they were all answered according to what you were looking for, and if they're not, don't hesitate. And the other thing I can tell you, that Jane has actually, I've made a temporary appointment, so she has actually been with us for 2.5 weeks now. And the burden that she has taken off the shoulders of Melissa and myself in just that short period of time, it was noticeable day one. So we are extremely happy to have her here, and the other departments have already gotten on board. There isn't anything that she isn't willing to help with or do, and it's very noticeable. So she has been received very warmly by other departments, and I'm extremely happy she's here.
Any additional comments or questions for the mayor?
Okay, thank you. I move that Jane Sekowitz be named as our new Easthampton City's Personnel Director with her term of expiration of July 21st, 2017.
Okay, motion and second to approval of the appointment of Jane Sekowitz as Personnel Director. Any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Welcome aboard. Moving on, I'm going to skip over the other 3 appointments and move on to Barbara. We have the city council appointment of our city clerk to the city council, and our present clerk, Barbara LeBombard, again expressed interest in coming on board and helping us and keeping us in our straight and narrow, make sure that we run our meetings nice and tight. So it was a unanimous 2-0 that Barbara be reappointed as our clerk to the city council. And with that, I will make a motion of that effect, that Barbara LeBombard, clerk to the city council, with her term ending August 31st, 2016.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the appointment of Barbara LeBombard to city clerk to city council. Any additional comments or discussion? Councilor Hagan?
Just one quick comment. I just personally would like to thank Barbara, because I think she always is diligent in what you ask her to do, and she's very knowledgeable in what she does. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, I was just thinking of saying that from day 1 to going on year 10, she has been invaluable to me, so it's an honor.
All of us.
So, any other comments besides kiss and hugs for, yeah, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Okay. Moving on, I have 3 more appointments. I'm going to make them all as one. The first appointment would be Ashley Kraus to the Conservation Commission with the expiration term of December 31st, 2017. James Valancourt to the Commission on Disability, again, 12/31/2017, and Justin Cobb, Energy Advisory Committee, 12/31/2017. Ashley, James, and Justin all came with very impressive letters of of recommendation from themselves, and the mayor put forth their nominations as rightly as she should have, because when you read their little bios, each person that applied for each of one of these departments, they're going to be invaluable assets to these different committees and appointments. And it's kind of nice to see Justin Cobb getting back into the mix of things, even though he wasn't there to get the 5th degree from Counselor Hagan. But if anybody else would like to put any other comments in that were at the meeting?
I concur. I think these are really good choices, and the individuals that are listed have been very present at a lot of things throughout the city, so they're already known and have full faith in their abilities.
Okay, I'll accept a motion then.
So I'll make the motion that the 3 candidates be moved forward as permanent appointments.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second for the approval of Ashley Kraus, James Valancourt, and Justin Cobb to Conservation Commission, Commission on Disability, and Energy Advisory Committee. Any additional discussion or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And that ends my committee report for tonight, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second to open public hearings. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. First one, it looks like Councilor Hagan.
I'll do a second reading. First public hearing tonight is a supplemental appropriation coming from the CPA funds, and it's dated June 18th, 2014. The request is hereby made for approval of the following appropriation. The amount requested is $900, and is to be appropriated from the CPA undesignated fund balance to and appropriated to the irrigation system at the community gardens in that amount of $900. The amount requested be used for the following purpose: to help fund the installation of an underground irrigation system at the Easthampton Community Gardens on Park Hill Road. This was approved unanimously by both the CPA committee and the Finance committee. The community garden, I believe it's Mr. Tufts, is present here from the community garden. I believe he's treasurer and can answer any of the councilors' other questions. But just as a quick aside, the community gardens have been ongoing for a while, and I guess there's one water source, and everyone's dragging hoses, and this is just a upgrade of the system. A total project of about $1,163. They're looking for $900 to put a couple of additional spigots so that it makes it a little more user-friendly. And if you'd like, Mr. Tufts can go through, in fact, if you don't mind coming up, Mr. Tufts, for a second, and just maybe you could tell the councilors or enlighten the councilors on the participation of the community gardens.
And just for the record, your name and address, please, Mr. Kraus.
Richard Tufts, 30 Sandra Road, Easthampton.
Thank you.
We have a beautiful location up on Park Hill Road. We've been there for 5 years. There's 45 plots that have been developed. Of the 5 years, 3 of those years, all 45 plots have been used. In the other years, it's usually been 42, 43 plots. We have room for an additional 12 plots if we ever need to expand. We had been running hoses over the surface of the ground, and one of our problems was when we turned on the system for anyone to water their plot, it pressured up the entire system, and we have full sun up there, and if someone left and forgot to turn off the hoses, over the last 4 years, we've had at least 3 major times when there were major breaks, a hose burst or something, and there was water flowing up there. So we got bids on how much it would cost to put in faucets spread out over the garden, and we ended up with the system now has 13 faucets spread out over the garden. The most anyone has to drag a hose is 50 feet. There are hoses at each of the 13 sites and on-off valves, and so we can turn the water system on, and now with the underground irrigation system, it's all protected from the sun, and if someone were to forget to turn the main valve off, it wouldn't have the same effect it's had in the past. We asked for $900 because that's what it cost to put the underground part in. We paid for pressure regulator and other parts that were necessary, and we also provided the manpower to put in the posts that we were going to mount the faucets on.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public who would like to comment on this, Mayor Kadger?
Actually, I'd like to thank Rick and the committee. They do an excellent job. Last year, I was fortunate enough to have one of the plots, and I can vouch for the dragging of the hose and turning of the switch. So it's a really good plan, and it definitely will save people like me time and effort, but also in turning off the water. But it's a great program, and I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to do it this year, and I would love to do it next year, and I thank the committee. They do a great job.
Okay, so is there anyone else from the public who would like to, City Planner Allen?
Public tonight.
I again just sort of want to follow up what the mayor says. Rick does an amazing job on the accounting, the community garden. He is very fiscally responsible with the funding for the garden, and I know how much he researched and thought this out before he actually applied for money. So it's just good kudos to Rick for the work that he puts in and volunteers, and I appreciate the time that we've spent together sort of figuring some of this stuff out. So I just want to acknowledge Rick and the amount of work that he's doing up there.
Right, thank you. Anyone else from the city public would like to? No. Okay, thank you, Councilor Hagan.
Just one comment, if any of the councilors, the liaison to the CPA committee is Jamie, the assistant planner, and certainly if there's any other questions for Jamie, I'm sure she would be glad to answer. Hearing no other, unless there's other, we have a...
I have one other comment to make. As a gardener, I know how great that's going to be for the crops themselves to have the underground irrigation system. And my hopes are that some timid gardeners who in the past have had the inconsistency of watering and not watering and shied away from gardening would really be inspired to join this. It's really exciting for the city.
Councilor.
I just wanted to reiterate, I think you're right, Councilor. This is one of the great assets of our community, to have the community gardens in such a beautiful location on Park Hill Road. For anyone who hears us and hasn't been up there to see the gardens and the work that the members of the community have done, please go there. It is a wonderful little location on Park Hill on the left side as you head out Park Hill Road. It's beautiful, it's an asset for our community, and we hope to have other community gardens in Easthampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Hagan.
If there's no other questions from the council, I'll make the following motion that the City Council approve the request for $900 to be appropriated from the CPA undesignated fund balance and appropriated to an irrigation system. The amount of the funding is for the following purpose: to install the underground irrigation system at Easthampton Community Gardens on Park Hill Road.
Second. Okay, a motion and a second to approve the supplemental appropriation of $900 from CPA undesignated to be for an irrigation system. Any additional comments, questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Our second public hearing tonight is also a supplemental appropriation that is being forwarded through the CPA funding, and I'll do a second reading. It's also dated June 18th. Request is hereby made for the following appropriation. The amount requested is $27,500, and it's appropriated from the CPA Affordable Housing Fund in that amount, $27,500, and appropriated to the community room accessibility in that amount, $27,500. The amount requested be used for the following purpose: to fund the construction of a handicap accessible restroom, automatic door, and accessible ramp at the Easthampton Housing Authority. This is another item that passed both the CPA committee and the finance subcommittee unanimously, and I'll just give a quick overview. I was kind of surprised when this one came forward, because this is the community room at the housing, which is used by not only seniors that live in that housing project, but also community groups, and all through this time, they haven't had a handicap bathroom within the thing, which, for a senior facility, you would assume with that. And they also need a door, the push handle, and when they do that, there's going to have to be some adjustment of the awning and ramp to supplement that. If, with the permission of the counselors, I'd like to call our new Human Resource Director up, who actually brought this forward for Cliffside Manor, Jane Sakowitz.
Cliffview Manor is a 91-bedroom unit development off of Holyoke Street. There is a community room there that is used for bingo weekly. We have a painting group that the Council on Aging has asked us to allow to have their weekly meetings there. We have scouting troops that meet there. We have card clubs, and a lot of the tenants use it because the apartments are small. If they want to have a family gathering, they reserve the community room. In the community room, the restrooms are standard restrooms. We are looking to convert what is now a storage closet into a handicap accessible unisex bathroom. And the only other part of handicap accessibility for that building would be the handicap ramp and the door opener. We do not have an automatic door opener. Once we add the automatic door opener, we have to modify the ramp that is there to allow for it to be level at the point of the door opener. We also now have to, with the modification of the ramp, we have to adjust the awnings to accommodate, to cover the new door opener. So there's two different phases to the project. We've known this hasn't been available to the tenants, the handicap bathroom. However, Easthampton Housing is a self-sufficient housing authority. We're one of few in the state. So the money we get each month is not from the state, it is from our rents. So the only money we do get from the state is for capital improvement, and that has to go towards roofs, furnaces, water heaters. So something like this has been on our wish list, but the funds just haven't been there. But the need is there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the audience here who would like to comment on this appropriation? Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Hagan.
Again, I guess the total of the project is $31,069, of which they're requested from the CPA, the amount $27,500. If there's any other questions from the councilors, I can answer, or again, the assistant planners here, if there's other questions.
I don't have any questions. I just want to make a comment that I think most of you or some of you remember back about 10 years ago when I was in a cast and in a wheelchair, and I found that getting around in a wheelchair isn't as simple as people perceive it to be. So these kind of improvements, I always love to see these kind of improvements from somebody that was in a wheelchair for 6 months, wheeling around and so forth. But I'm also very surprised that, and probably we're very fortunate in the fact that under the Americans with Disabilities Act that we haven't been cited for any of these things. So I think it's on the other side of that we get this done as soon as possible. So I think it's a very good use of the money, and so really that's all I have to say. So.
Any additional comments or questions? Okay, Councilor Haig.
Hearing none, I'll make the following motion, that the City Council approve funding in the amount of $27,500 to be appropriated from CPA Affordable Housing and appropriated to Community Room Access, and that amount, $27,500, to fund the construction of a handicap accessible restroom, automatic door, and accessible ramp at the Easthampton Housing Authority.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the supplemental appropriation of $27,500 from CPA Affordable Housing to the Community Room Accessibility. Any additional comments or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes.
I believe those are the two public hearings.
Okay. Acceptance of Willow Circle and Autumn. I believe that's Councilor Hayes.
So
we'd like to move to put this as public way, but do we have anybody from the public here who would like to speak about it?
If you, or either you or Councilor Hagan just want to give us a little update on some of your deliberations.
These are two roads from a development that was done many years ago, and it's taking a long time to get it all figured out and done. So we've been looking at the street protocols, and we went out and we did a site visit, and there were a couple of improvements that needed to happen to the street, and I was under the impression that those were going to be done by the time we did our public hearing, but apparently Councilor Hagan went out and took a look, and they're not finished. So I would like, if you could speak to that.
Didn't realize they weren't done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can
neither
just come
did
to the
I.
podium to state your
Yeah.
name, sorry. Thank you.
Neither did I.
So my name's Attorney Amanda Zadonis Kemp. I represent Mr. Gall. And so I was not aware that, I know that we had the site visit in June, I believe it was, right? And I know there were things that that he needed to finish. I was not aware it was not done at this point. I was under the impression everything was finished.
Right, because she had come to our last public safety meeting, and we were all kind of told that this was going to be done, so.
Councilor Hagan, could you fill us in?
Yeah, I just, again, at this site visit, there was Attorney Kemp and Mr. Gall, the city engineer, Mr. Gracia, and everyone agreed if anyone was familiar with the Willow Autumn, one end as you come down Willow Circle, you're heading toward Fox Run, there's actually the road just abruptly ends, and there's approximately 5-foot drop that just goes right off the edge of the road. So it was the Public Safety Committee through Councilor Hayes that and Councilor Winnie that we felt that a barrier should be placed with reflectors at the end of that road. So if someone's coming down, because there has been at least one incident, alleged incident anyway, that a car went over that thing. And so at that meeting and subsequently, we did get a letter from City Engineer Gracia dated June 25th that he spelt out exactly what he felt should be built, and at least at that meeting and from Mr. Gracia, and I think, I appreciate the candidness of Attorney Kemp, everything was supposed to be completed by tonight except possibly Attorney Gracia, City Engineer Gracia said that they might have to come back after the thing was graded to reseed the area in September. But I went up there earlier today just to see what it looked like, and there was nothing completed other than one seam was sealed, but I think that was sealed at the time. It might have been, a couple of others weren't sealed, and there was nothing done on the barrier. So, as I said, that was earlier today, so, again,
I suspicion that the council would be hesitant to vote on this without the routing done, so maybe
Yeah,
our bus
I mean, I
co-host,
wanna-
if you would like to make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Can I ask a question?
Councilor Rist?
What is the incentive for Mr. Gall to complete this process? Is there a bond that he would have released should this happen? So there is no incentive for him to move forward. I would just like to see that whole process re-examined. I know this is not the time to discuss it, but this is ridiculous. We can't get developers to do the work we're asking them to do, yet the city's taxpayers are obviously, and the people who live there deserve to have the streets plowed, et cetera, and work done, and that's happening. So what's the incentive? There's no incentive, which is why probably this didn't get done. I'd like an answer to why it wasn't done, and when will it get done? Obviously, this has been going on, and it's really unfortunate that this council is being handcuffed by this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two issues here. I've been part of observing the process, and one of the things that I don't want to make it sound that the city doesn't have some responsibility here, no. And that there was a list of requirements sent to the developer late in the fall. Developer completed what was asked of him, and then during the winter, because I think we just had a change in elections and new committees, during the winter, before it got going, I think, well, obviously that barrier disappears, so that was something that was added additionally, but I will say that I think there's some responsibility on both sides of this delay, but in the meantime, I also agree with you, the process needs to be improved.
Well,
for
I
sure.
think,
Yeah,
yes, I would agree with you. We all saw that there was there needs to be a better street acceptance protocol, so that's why we're working on it. I think we're making some great moves with that. But I really appreciate going out and taking a look, because, you know, there was no indication that this was not going to happen. Everybody kind of seemed on board that this was the last thing. Let's make the public hearing. Let's make it move forward. Let's get it done.
So, I mean, I assume it's, Attorney, are you in a place or position or to answer that? Do you think a 2-week time? No, a month. Do you think a month would be enough time?
I would assume so. I was under the impression that it was already completed, so, but I certainly can contact him tomorrow morning, ask him what the time frame is. If it's something he cannot do, I can let you know right away, so it doesn't get scheduled for the next meeting until it's done. But I just wanted to make one comment, because we did talk about it at the subcommittee meeting. In terms of this development and the roads being accepted, this was a 110-lot subdivision, which isn't something that you do in a year. It's not even something you do in 5 years, and in this case, it's something that he's been working on for 15 to 20 years. And so it's difficult to say, you know, you should have this done in a year's time, or you should have this done in 5 years' time, because had he just put the roads in without having finished building all these houses, there would have been heavy equipment traipsing across the roads, across the sidewalks, and now the town's going to be responsible for making all the repairs, whereas he waited to seek acceptance until a majority of the lots were sold and developed. I mean, we sold a lot just last year on Willow Circle. So that's part of the delay in regards to this subdivision. I can't speak to everyone else, but that's a big part of why, and he's done it in piecemeal. As roads have been done and houses have been finished being built, that is when he sought acceptance of these roads. So he continued to maintain them. He put in sidewalks once a majority of the construction was done, which saved the city from having to do it, you know, repairs after the fact. So I just wanted to point that out when you start talking about, you know, what you're going to do as far as policy is concerned.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be probably involved or asked to be involved in some of the discussions in the future. Thank you very much.
Sure.
City Planner Allen, did you have a comment?
Just to sort of comment on the policy aspect, you may or may not know, but when subdivisions are approved, there's usually a performance bond or some letter of credit that's part of that adoption process. So we do have old subdivisions that still re-up their letter of credit year after year. So there is some protection to the city, and I just want to be able to answer that for you now, that there is some process, it's part of the subdivision, and those letters of credit are, or what the conditions are tied to those bonds, are usually set by the planning board. So as you move forward with this policy, I think it's important that either you let me know when you're holding these meetings and when you're discussing them, so that we can make sure that this discussion is also coordinated with planning board adoption, subdivision adoptions. Yes.
I saw Councilor Hagan first.
I just wanted to point out, and I don't put this on the current planner, and I thank Councilor Hayes, but she's made great attempts to get planning board records, and that's one of the problems in the city, is a lot of records aren't there. We don't know what planning boards have done. We don't know what bonds have been issued. It's been frustrating, I think.
Sure.
I know it's been frustrating as a subcommittee member, never mind the chair of the committee, too.
Yeah. I find that the Registry of Deeds is my best source at this point. For some of these old subdivisions, there's covenants agreements, so, you know, we can, the files, as you well know, are a little bit scattered downstairs, but, you know, we've dug as far as we could in terms of our files. I think we're trying to set up a better process for the future so that our files now are pretty well maintained, so we shouldn't have this problem in the future. But you know, we could dig in the Registry of Deeds and see how far we can get in terms of information.
Councilor Riss?
I just wanted to say that I think it should be a planning board policy, and I was talking about the future with regard to bonding.
Sure.
If it's a new policy that you and the planning board want to set forward, and we need to do an ordinance that backs that up, I'm hoping that can happen sooner.
Sure,
than
we
later.
already have language in their subdivision regulations for performance bonds, so they're required already, and they.
So is it possible then for a planning board to waive these obligations? In the past, it may have been.
They generally don't. I mean, what may have happened is, we'll go back and look in the records for performance bonds for this specifically, and a lot of these subdivisions have multiple names, so the records are hard to find because they're known as different things, so they may be filed in one thing but called something else. In any event, we do still have some active letters of credit for subdivisions that were approved 10, 15 years ago. We'll go down and see whether this one still has an active letter of credit. The problem with the letter of credit is they're only good for a year, and we have to keep on top of making sure that the developer renews them year after year, which, for the most part, developers are pretty good about doing it, but we also have our own record keeping to try to keep on top of these things as well.
Okay.
Still comments or questions, Councilor?
I was going to follow up that. How long do you think it'll take you to find this?
We can look tomorrow. Jamie is, they're all in her file, so she can take a look tomorrow. Okay. Oh, and Amanda has it in her file.
Amanda's been amazing with her record keeping.
Yeah, information
Amanda's
that
been
they were looking
amazing.
for and that they were missing. So there was a performance covenant on this, and it was released in 1999. So it said that
Yeah.
lots designated on the said plan, have been released. So, and it's been recorded at the registry.
Okay.
At least that's what my file has.
Just, Council, it may be I just want to thank Attorney Kemp, because she has really provided the committee more documents, and she's been our best source for documents, and I thank her for that cooperation.
Absolutely.
Councilor Riss?
Finally, I just want to say that although it sounded like I was attacking the developer in this particular case, I am really concerned about the process and hoping that we in the planning board can move this forward, because since we've been on the council, we've had these kinds of discussions constantly when performance bonds have been released and the streets haven't been accepted yet, and I think that's a backwards kind of way of doing business. So glad to see the planning board and the planner is on top of it, and I hope we can move forward with that. That's all I'm saying. It wasn't meant to be an attack on the developer right now. I'm sure they're doing it.
I'm going to answer to part of what Councilor Rist is alluding to. We have had it on our discussion for the protocol and procedures of street acceptances, and Councilor Hayes has taken the reins on this. She's worked very hard. We've had numerous meetings, the three of us, and we are in the process now of putting forth a draft that will then go to the planning board and all of the other departments, and we've been working very closely with Jim Gracia on some of the input, and I think that once Councilor Hayes gets it into its final draft and we get it out there, she's got some great ideas, and I know that we've been antiquated, and no one has stepped up to the plate to do this except for Councilor Hayes, and I want to give her a lot of kudos, because this was like herding cats, and I really hate that saying, but I'm finding myself saying it more and more. Literally, this was that difficult for her to do this, and she's on the right track, and you just need to give us a little time, and but I think by the end of the year, we are going to have some really good protocols and procedures for street acceptances and such, and that the contractor will be able to go to the planning board and say, okay, so what do I need? And they'll be able to hand them a packet and say, this is what you need to do. And one-stop shopping, as we always has envisioned it. And so I just want to ask you to just be patient. It's coming, and I want to give, again, Councilor Hayes a lot of kudos, because this is going to be a really good document when she's done.
Terrific,
So.
thank you. Councilor Kwasinski?
Just glad to see we're working on the policies and procedures, and we're going to get them done. On just a practical note, I hadn't been down Willow, and you're saying there was a 5-foot drop and there's no protections? Are there barrels or something?
Nothing.
Is there something that the city can do in the interim, that,
Well,
I mean, some orange barrels or something, just to warn somebody?
we don't own it.
We don't own the street, so it wouldn't be in our, maybe we could loan some barrels to the developer temporarily, I don't know, but it'd be nice to be able to be assured that there's some protections for someone who might go down there.
Yeah, we should maybe talk to Engineer
Maybe,
Gracia about that. but
maybe the mayor could look into that?
Councilor Hayes, did you maybe then make a motion to continue the public hearing till?
Yeah, I wanted to ask if it's better for us administratively to make a motion to continue the hearing and then take it off if we're not ready?
Continue it till-
Yeah, okay, so let's make a motion to continue the hearing to our next meeting, which is September
3rd.
3rd.
Yes. Okay, is there a second for that?
Yes, second.
Okay, motion a second to continue the public hearing on Willow Circle Autumn Drive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Zoning map amendment, I believe this is Counselor Ziegler tonight.
Okay. As part of a recommendation from the city planner for the disposal of the Parsons Street School on 48 Parsons, one of the recommendations to the property subcommittee was to have a consideration of rezoning the full property, or in this case, well, I'll just get to it in a second. But there was consideration of rezoning the Parsons Street School to neighborhood business from R10. Currently, the front 80 feet is neighborhood business, and just for the consideration of the use of the property subcommittee thought that it was a good idea to have more flexibility in its use. So on July 22nd, in a joint meeting with the planning board, it was approved unanimously by both the planning board and ordinance subcommittee to move forward with bringing it to the full council to have the 330 feet back from the front line of the property, which is currently 80 feet of that is neighborhood business and the rest is R10. So to make a motion to the full council to have it zoned as neighborhood business, which again will allow more flexibility when the consideration of the future property is decided. So that's basically the background on it, not a motion.
Is there anyone, City Planner Alan, would you like to comment on?
I don't have any additional comments.
Okay.
Unless you have questions.
Obviously, as Councilor Briss alluded before, the planning board had met about that change in zoning, and they voted 5-0 in favor of the zoning of the property 330 feet back from the property line. So they are also in favor of this. So if there's no one else from the public who would like to speak to this issue, I guess I'll let Councilor Ziegler take out, except Councilor Hagan.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
The neighborhood up there had input on this, and this was something they were, I know they weren't at the planning board, but they've had some type of input on it.
The neighborhood had input in it on the property committee. I'm not so sure there was input on the ordinance subcommittee.
But I mean,
they were in favor
chance
of
rezoning it was brought up at that time.
Correct.
I know it may not have gone through that committee.
Right.
Councilor Hayes?
At one of the meetings where the public was there, they're concerned about the zoning, if it was going to change any zoning around it, and once we mentioned that, no, it was just adding this to new business, everybody seemed fine with that.
As you can see on the map in the back, the majority of Parsons Street on either side, or I should say maybe about 80 feet on either side, is currently neighborhood business. So it's just extending that back specifically in this one area.
I'd like to mention too that at that July 22nd joint meeting, that was a public hearing as well, so there was some opportunity for the public to speak then.
Okay. I guess there's no more comments. Councilor Ziegler, I'd accept a motion then.
Okay, so I move that the City Council approve changing the zoning of the former Parsons Street School at 48 Parsons Street from R10 to neighborhood business for a distance of 330 feet back from the front property line. The front 80 feet approximately of the parcel is currently zoned neighborhood business and will remain neighborhood business.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, and a second, to just previously read change the zoning. Any additional discussions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Motion passes. Accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second, a motion, and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Continuing on boards and committees, I believe we left off at ordinance, which is Councilor Ziegler tonight.
Okay. First thing I'm looking here, it appears that I would like to request a 90-day extension on the request to adopt Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2002.
Second. Okay, we have a motion, and a second for 90-day extension on the Chapter 2 of Acts 2002. Any additional discussion or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
And as we've already addressed in public hearing, Parsons Street School, we have nothing further.
Okay. Thank you. It's still you, property. Just put on a different hat.
Okay. So, I don't know exactly when this was brought to the property subcommittee, but since I've been the chair of the property since January. 7/10/13, great. It's on the agenda. There's been discussion of the former Parsons Street School and consideration, many different considerations for use of the building. And we've, since January, we've met a number of times. We've had some significant public input. And then at the last council meeting, which I was absent at, I heard there was some concerns or questions regarding some of the requirements versus recommendations. So we re-met since that time, and we came up with another motion, again, with the input of many of the councilors present and with some community input again. So I'm not sure if there's any questions or comments from the public, but actually we're not in public hearing. So we would like to move forward, as we have on previous motions, to make a motion to authorize the disposal of Parsons Street school parcel.
I have a motion yet, I have a question.
Oh, right, I haven't made the motion yet, but I'm saying we would like to move forward with a motion tonight on the disposal of the Parsons Street School.
Okay. So, I mean, I believe all of us have this in front of us, instead of having to, read all the changes. If there's any questions here, you can address them either, the Councilor Ziegler, or I was at several, Councilor Rist.
Just want to thank the property committee for this hard work, and I know it's been a long time and you inherited this from the previous property committee, and regardless of how that was dealt with by the previous, I know you've been working very hard on this, and I want to thank you and especially our planner and how this has come forward. I would just like to ask how, I noticed there are recommendations, and I know recommendations don't necessarily get involved in the RFP, but if either the planner or the finance director would answer the question of how you deal with RFPs with these different recommendations, and whether or not, how you weight them, I guess, beyond the 3 top ones which must be met. If I'm correct, they have to be met by the RFP, but then the bottom ones, how do you weight them? This isn't a priority list, I don't think, right?
It's not a priority list.
So then, how do you go about that?
So for instance, I think a good example would be if somebody wanted to offer $1.5 million for the property, but didn't want to hit any of the recommendations, versus somebody who offered the minimum bid and wanted to do all of the recommendations. Then it's going to be up to the review committee to sort of weigh, and ultimately the mayor to make the decision on which proposal serves the best interest of the city. So the weighting, there is no weighting in terms of priority, but it's going to be,
there's some influence.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, somebody could say, I don't want to do any of I don't want affordable housing, I don't want any of the things that are listed in here, but I'll offer you $1.5 million, versus somebody who say, I will give you everything that you're asking for, but my minimum bid is here. It's going to be up to the review committee to decide, based on all of those proposals, what meets the best needs of the city.
Okay, that answers my question.
And any other questions, Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, when we left the meeting, we were going to be presented with a paragraph that was going to go into the request for proposals. So,
Yeah, I think it was
That is
summarized into
part,
bullet
additional
points instead of a
consideration.
paragraph.
Right here.
It's in bullets versus a paragraph, I guess.
so this exact language is going into the request for proposals?
I haven't seen what you're looking at, so I don't know what. Thank you. Yes, that would be summarized into something understandably in plain English. Yes. Or we could just put it as bullets. But yes, that would be incorporated.
Okay, I was part of the process, and I was actually really pleased with the second meeting, and there were a lot of discussion, and we moved through a lot of important points, and I think everyone was in agreement that what is most important is to allow the mayor the flexibility and the committee to move this property. We already are paying, have been paying heating oil, and I know certainly our finance director is very excited to move this forward. So I think this gives everyone the flexibility, and the point that I think also came up, these are our city leaders. They are not here to, mess it up or to I think we can trust them. They will work to get the best possible job for the city. But the point did come in, and this is, as Councilor Hayes mentioned in the paragraph, is there were a lot of comments that came in. And we thought, instead of saying, okay, that comment is better than that comment and that comment, let us put them all into, a list of things that the people who are negotiating can have an idea of what else is important to the community, what else has come up, and give them the flexibility, not be limited, but give them the flexibility to ask for things and give them a negotiating room. Councilor Ziegler, did you want to add?
Well, I was just going to say, as for the paragraph at the end of the property subcommittee, I articulated these 6 bullets pretty much verbatim, saying that this would be the paragraph. So it wasn't that we were going to add additional language or there was ambiguity about the paragraph. These were the bullets, the main points that were going to go into the paragraph. So it may not be in paragraph form, but it's the points that were suggested.
Councilor Hayes?
Well, right, and the only reason I said that is because we initially talked about having a list of requirements and then having a list of recommendations, and we eschewed most of that because there were a lot of different things, and weighing them out, we were going to put them in a paragraph and have that be actually part of the request for proposal, rather than having, some requirements and some recommendations.
And again, as Council President had stated, the main intent here was to provide maximum flexibility to the review team and to the mayor in consideration of the proposals that would be received.
Any additional comments or questions for your councilors or city planner? No, thank you very much. Oh,
Thank you.
Councilor Hayes.
Oh, no, not for the planner, no.
Not for the last minute.
Again, I want to thank Councilor Ziegler for the property. There was a lot of work done at it, and I know it wasn't an easy task. I was at that last meeting, and I know Councilor Kwasinski had a list of a lot of proposals, and it's troubled me since that meeting because I was sitting near one of the residents, and I'm still, and I know we're trying to, and I have a lot of faith in this administration that they will do the right thing, but this community also has had its share of dense housing back from when we had the mill housing that was created over there. And I think there's been a lot of concern by the neighborhood that this is sort of the jewel of the neighborhood left is Parsons Street School. And at the conclusion of the meeting, and I still hear it, is the resident that was sitting next to me, while I don't think was against what was said, I think felt they were not being given enough specific, specific recommendations that they would like to see. I think they were in general with thought, and her final comment to me was something to the effect of, I don't know why I keep coming to these meetings because all you guys do is what you're going to do anyway. And I guess that's it's bothered me a little bit because I'm a big constituent person. So anyway, I just wanted to make those comments because I still don't know how I feel on the whole. And again, I'm not picking on the committee because I think the committee had a tough job, and I think they're doing the best thing. And again, I have a lot of faith in the administration too. I just don't know.
Right, and I think to address those concerns, there were some members of the community who wanted a full plan for the entire property as it currently is, and one of the recommendations, of course, is to split the property, and community members were expressing they wanted to know what the plan was then for the open space, and we were not prepared to go there. At this point, we're looking to maintain that space as open space or green space for the city, and there were a number of people who, again, wanted to talk about potential community gardens or a park or other things, and we were trying to be specific and just say, these are the recommendations to come out and divide the property, maintain this, but authorize the mayor to move forward with the disposal of the building itself, the school. So we tried to be sensitive to the concerns of the community.
Councilor Hayes?
I was wondering if we could hear specifically from the finance director, because I can see that she was just looking at it and shaking her head. Is this going to be able to move forward?
Yeah, no, I was just commenting.
Would you go to the... Thank you.
It just seems like there was something wrong with it. I just want to make sure.
No, I was just checking with Jessica. The parcel will have to be split before we do the RFP. So I don't know what that, I've never done that process. I don't think it'll take an enormous amount of time, but we have to do that first. So like you're saying, like the bottom part will be included in the bid documents. 1 and 2 will be in the bid documents, but number 3 has to be done prior to doing a description of the property in the bid documents.
Right.
So
Number 3, which is required
split
of
the
us,
parcel.
okay.
I was just
Right.
figuring out logistics for myself.
Counselor Riss?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, the appraisal, which I see we're requesting funding, if we manage to get that approved in the first September meeting, that won't hold you up, and can we ask for an appraisal before that, or do you need, you have to have the money in place? I mean, I don't know how
Well,
that...
the appraisal, he told me it was going to take 6 weeks.
Really?
Yes. And so that's why I asked for the money now. And we have to survey the property in order to split it. So that's why there's money in there, too. So that has to be split. Then I have to have a new lot, and the zoning has now changed, which also changes the value of the
So
property.
there's deed and, oh my God, okay, well, I think it's in the best interest of the city, the way this is being done,
Right.
so
Yeah,
it is
so I
taking
just-
a little longer,
I
but...
put the funding, I'm guessing, he gave me an estimate on that, I'm guessing on the,
That's the notice.
now I've forgotten the word already.
Appraisal or survey?
No, the survey, but I think that has to be done when you split it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any additional?
No, I think that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Counselor Ziegler, I guess we can get a motion if you would like to read through this for us.
Okay, I move that the mayor be authorized to dispose of the Parsons Street School parcel in accordance with the following recommendations and requirements. Number 1, recommend a minimum bid equal to the appraisal value of the building. Number 2, require future developers to preserve the historic character of the building. Number 3, require the parcel to be split 330 feet back from the Parsons Street where the fence line cuts in, with the city retaining the back acre for public open or green space. Additional consideration of the following is encouraged in reviewing the proposals. Proposals which provide barrier-free, accessible, and/or adaptable residential units. Proposals which provide 1 to 2 units of affordable housing. Proposals which incorporate separate publicly available community space, possibly the basement. Proposals which include mixed use and neighborhood business opportunity. Proposals that have less than 12 units. And proposals that include market-based housing and home ownership. Additionally, all proposals are expected to meet land use codes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the just previously read recommendations, requirements for the Parsons Street property. Additional comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstain?
I'll abstain.
And 1 abstention. Thank you very much. Ad hoc,
Who's on that committee?
as I think the last time I mentioned, there was a committee formed to name the soccer fields, and I know that on that committee are Mr. Patrick Burff, Dave Motor, John Mason, and can you help me, City Clerk, who?
Yep.
Look at that. That would have been...
No, I haven't.
Thank you very much. I so apologize for It is, here we go. Yes, of course. City Councilor Salem Derby, who I forgot, Patty Doherty, John Mason, Dave Motter, and Patrick Bruff. So they are the committee for the naming. They will follow typical procedures of public hearings to discuss possible names, but that is the chosen committee. Moving on to new business, we do have an election coming up, and I'm sure City Clerk always likes us to remind people that August 20th is your last day to register to vote in the primary. If you haven't done so yet, but I would like to make a motion that as we are directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of the city of Easthampton who are qualified to vote in the primaries to meet respective polling places in said city on Tuesday, the 9th day of September 2014, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the following purposes: to cast their vote at the state primary for the candidates of political parties for the following offices: Senator in Congress, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Secretary of the State, Treasurer and Receiver General, Auditor, Representative of Congress, Counselor, Senator in General Court, Representative in General Court, District Attorney, and Registrar of Probate. So I read that in a motion that we will certify this election warrant.
Second.
Okay, there's a second on that. Any additional discussion? No, okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Interdepartmental transfers, I believe that's you, Counselor Hagan.
Yeah, there's two, I'll do first reading on the first interdepartmental transfer. This is dated July 29th, 2014. The amount requested is $6,000, and to be transferred from the reserve fund, and that amount $6,000, and transferred to the treasurer's professional services. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to cover the cost of the real estate appraisal and survey of the Parsons Street School property. I'd like to make a motion that this be sent to Finance.
Second. Okay, there's a motion, a second, to move the interdepartmental transfer of $6,000 from the reserve fund to Treasurer's Professional Services. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I'd also like to make a further request to the council, given the vote tonight, that we set a public hearing on this item for the first meeting in September 3rd, to take up the interdepartmental transfer.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to set a public hearing for this departmental transfer for September 3rd, 6:15 PM in these chambers. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Second interdepartmental transfer is dated July 30th, 2014. The amount requested is as followed: $26,300 to be transferred from the reserve fund, $26,300, and transferred to the highway repair and maintenance, and that amount, $26,300. The amount requested to be used for the following purpose: to fund repairs to the John Deere loader. And I'd make a motion that be sent to Finance for consideration.
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second, to approve, send to Finance a departmental transfer of $26,300 from the reserve fund to the highway repair and maintenance. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
And I guess I'd also like to have a public hearing on this for September 3rd, given some of the documentation in here, which will obviously be taken up at committee. It seems like this loader's already at a dealership, so if we're going to approve it or not approve it, I think we should try to make a decision. So I'll request that we set a public hearing on this matter also for September 3rd, 2014.
Okay, so there's a motion, a second, to set a public hearing for this interdepartmental transfer of $26,300, September 3rd, 6:15 PM in these chambers. Additional comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And I believe the last thing we have, it's always nice to end when we have generous...
All the text tab, right?
Okay. When we have generous city businesses that are always willing to help out the city, and probably one of the four leaders certainly is Easthampton Savings Bank, which is always finding ways to help us out. And so we've been, they've been sent us a couple of gifts, an executive U-shaped desk and matching credenza with Hutch from Easthampton Savings Bank, and two mountain bikes for police patrol from Easthampton Electric Services Incorporated. So two great businesses that have made these donations, but I believe as City Council we need to accept them. So in the form of the motion, I would like to say, make a motion to accept the gifts of the executive U-shaped desk and matching credenza from Hutch from Easthampton Savings Bank, and the two mountain bikes from police patrol from Easthampton Electric Services.
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second, to accept those gifts. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Okay, I believe Councilor Ziegler, you want to move it to ordinance?
Okay, we've also received an application for a taxi business license here tonight, and form of motion, I'd like to move this to the ordinance subcommittee.
Second. Okay, a motion, a second, to move the application for taxi vehicle license to ordinance. Any additional discussions? Councilor Rist?
As I happened to be walking past the clerk's office when this man was approached, I was approached by the clerk and by this man to try and see how long this process would be, and I know there's a definitive process that goes on for getting a business started. He's moved his business from Northampton to Easthampton, and I know we've been accused in the past of not being business friendly. So anything we can do to expedite this process, because apparently he cannot function until the license is granted. So his taxi cabs sit idly by, and I'm not certainly, I know you'll be diligent with the planner or wherever to look it over, but I hope we can demonstrate that we're not going to be slow on this if we don't have to be. Through the work you have.
Does this require a public hearing?
No. Just thank you. I just said I'd say that, so I said it.
Any other discussion or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained? Have a good the rest of the summer and see you September 3rd.
We have some things to sign.